Zach has just released his new book, The Trade Gap. It's a fascinating read and it's packed with insight, and picking up a copy is a great way to support the important work he's doing. I've read it myself and I can confidently say you'll get a ton of value out of it. Speaking of value, one of the ways we go deeper here at Silvercore is through The Outpost, our private podcast for Silvercore Club members. Club member Jess wrote in about The Outpost, and here's what she had to say. The Outpost is a delightful, bite-sized mini pod with just enough content to kickstart your brain into doing some deep thinking. The homework given at the end of almost every episode is awesome. Makes me feel extra engaged with what I'm listening to. As well, it encourages me to think outside the box on a lot of topics. Keep them coming. If you're a member, your personal link is waiting for you in the Silvercore Club dashboard. If not, you can learn more at silvercore.ca. Now, let's get into this podcast. I'm joined today by a man who's worked with Fortune 500 giants. He's authored bestsellers, he's lived off grid, and he's welded his way back to something most of us didn't realize we'd lost. With his new book, The Trade Gap, as opposed to romanticizing the trades, he's here to show us why we desperately need them and what's at stake if we don't act. Welcome back to the Silvercore podcast, my friend, Zach Hanson.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be back, as a two-timer, and, I'm glad to be an actual friend, someone who's actually literally sat down and broken bread with you. Glad to be here.
Speaking of breaking bread, you know what I'm really craving? One of those, now I don't know how you pronounce them, scone or scone. Someone's going to correct me one side or the other, English, Scottish, or vice versa. But Merits, holy crow, I have been craving those ever since we had them last time there in Boise. Even though in Canada, I think we call them a donut, but it's a deep fried, it's amazing. If you're ever down in Boise, Idaho, whoever's listening to this, check that place out.
Yeah, Merits Café, been there for over 50 years. It's probably one of the few, I don't know if you'd call it a hole in the wall, but it's got that kind of old diner, Western decor. But yeah, they have what they call scones, which is really I'm from the South, so I would have called it a funnel cake, but it's like a flat dough fried with cinnamon sugar or whatever else is going on it. But very good.
Oh man, they're so good. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think hole in the wall is the right term, but it's definitely a throwback. It's and my favorite places to eat are like that. It's funny how the atmosphere in a restaurant can do so much for the food. Like you can go into fine dining and it's so sterile and you're just like, you can't wait to get out.
Well, another one along those lines that I think would fit that motif is 100% the Beaver Lodge up in Atlanta, Idaho.
Oh, yes.
You're not getting the best food in the world, but the atmosphere makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, what's the population there now?
Well, I mean, if you subtract us from being full-time residents, I mean, they're probably floating around 32, 33.
That's not 3,200. That's 32, 33 people. Yeah, the Beaver Lodge was definitely a cool place to be at. And I think about some of my favorite restaurants, Tarps in Boston, San Tarpio's Pizza. It's an old throwback kind of dive, and it's just that vibe that I'm attracted to. The Beaver Lodge, you go in there and everyone's kind of looking at you side-eyed, like, who is this person coming in? Because when the population 32, 33, anybody coming in that doesn't look like they belong there is going to be some question marks.
Yeah, it goes that way until you say, oh, I'm here with insert name of resident, and they're like, oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, and then they're bending over backwards, and then the hospitality was amazing there. The fishing on the way up there, holy crow. So some of the best fishing I've ever had in my life on the rivers, driving up to your place there in Atlanta. Now, you'd lent me that tenkara rod, and I'll be honest, I was a little shy about tenkara because it's kind of like skaters and rollerblades. That one joke comes out about rollerblades and nobody wants to touch them, right? And then with those tenkara rods, the traditionalists, the people who are into fly fishing or spay fishing or whatever, nymphing, and they'll all kind of got their opinion about what tenkara is about, despite the fact that tenkara has been around way longer than any of these other disciplines. And so I never touched it, and I stayed away from it. But you lent me the rod, and now I've got a tenkara rod in the back of my truck that lives there. And if I'm early for a meeting and I know there's a river nearby, If I got a little bit of time to kill, bang out of the truck, it's up in seconds and I'm fishing with it. So thank you for introducing me to that.
Well, it was funny, and I guess maybe context for people listening. I guess this last summer or the summer before. Time is a
Oh
flat
man,
circle for me right now.
100%. Same with me.
Last summer, right?
I want to say last summer where there's a heat wave. It was like
Mm.
42 or something when we're over there.
That's Celsius for the people listening in America, which is like
Yes.
103, 104 Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Um,
was crazy.
yeah, but when you got up in the mountains, it was better. But nonetheless, you and your wife went up and stayed at our cabin, and I just remember, I handed you that tenkara rod, and I know nothing about fishing. That was a gift from somebody else to me, and I hadn't used it yet. And I think you stopped at a fly shop here in Boise, and you outfitted it. And I've used it since then. And you kind of gave me the other flies and stuff you got for it. But man, the pictures you sent to me on the North Fork of the Boise, just hammering fish. That
Oh
was
man, it was like every time I cast, it was one coming back. It was insane, man. I had such a good time there.
I don't know. Did you just put your finger in the air on the North Fork? Because wherever you stopped, that was like the honey hole. I know you dropped me a pin, and I'm keeping that for when I need to go back. But what do you
Yeah,
think that was divine intervention or just luck?
yeah. Divine intervention probably had some play in there. I tend to try and find places where there aren't other people, even though the people are usually the indicator of where it's a hot spot.
Hmm.
But it's like going out into the salt chuck out here, and you take your boat out, and you see all these people, and they're trolling in lines, and everybody wants to get in that line because they figure the other person knows what's up. And I'll just stay completely away from everybody else, and I'll catch. And all these other people don't realize that the first person who set up had no idea what they're doing, and they're just trolling, and everyone else started trolling around. Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd, right?
That's how it goes. But man, that was awesome. I'm glad you guys were able to get up there and have success fishing and poking around. And for those that don't know, like for my first book, Turning Feral, was all about my move to that small town of Atlanta, Idaho, and that's where you and I connected the first time. And I was pretty excited that you guys got to at least go and see it. There's very few people that I've connected with over the past few years that have had the opportunity to, but I'm always excited when someone can.
Oh, you know what? And I'm the type that always says no. Someone's like, "Oh, you should stay at my place." No, 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 it's okay. Oh, you should borrow this. No, 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 right? And I'm it's just my personality type for whatever reason.
You and me
And
both.
I'm so glad that I said yes. I mean, there is some arm twisting, like you were persistent. I'm like, you know what? I think he means it. Okay, I'm going to say yes. And what an adventure. And I mean, okay, so hot out, but nice cool stream going out the side. That gets too cold, jump in the hot springs. I mean, it was beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I'm glad. And you guys were great guests and very gracious and everything. So,
Yeah, we only threw one party. I
yeah,
mean,
just one. But you cleaned up pretty good. You know,
it
you
was
left a little puke spot, but other than that,
yeah, I think we got most of the 33 people out there, but it was pretty good.
yeah, there was some like Canadian denim left around, but other than that,
Well, that's the Canadian tuxedo, right? The denim jacket and the left a little maple syrup stains in the corner. But aside from that,
they're all forgivable sins.
yeah. So we were chatting last. Was what connected us was turning feral, and so you and your background in AI and in the tech industry and computers, and then you find yourself supporting your family through trapping.
Hmm.
Bit of a throwback skill. And now you've got the book, The Trade Gap.
Hmm.
And when we were together last time, you were midway through the process of learning to weld.
Yep.
Stick welding, I think it was that you were working on.
Yep.
Where are you at with that now?
Still doing it, as a hobby. So, I mean, I guess context for folks, and if you listened to the first podcast, Turning Feral, was my adventure from being a white collar corporate desk jockey, which for all intents and purposes, I still am. But that was my career. I never grew up in the outdoors outside of just, occasional outings. But I didn't grow up hunting, fishing, got an interest in it, went through a divorce, ended up moving to the most remote town in the lower 48, Atlanta, Idaho, kind of restarting my life and learning to hunt, ultimately trap, which is where most of my passion ended up lying. And just kind of rediscovering what it meant to be human, because I was always stuck at a computer, playing with algorithms, all that good jazz. And that's been a great adventure. That's been the last 7 years of my life, remarried, multiple awesome kids. My wife's great as well. But in that process, I always kept my day job. But I was starting to learn skills on the side, mostly trapping, some welding, some other stuff that you just have to learn in order to live a relatively off-grid lifestyle. Even just down to changing your own oil and fixing plumbing issues, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of just a natural progression for me from going white collar to kind of being out in the middle of nowhere. And what Travis was kind of alluding to, in 2023, I, for the first time in my professional white collar career, had the axe fall on me in the result of a layoff. So all of a sudden, I was staring at 2 mortgages, a bunch of kids, wife, and I had all the white collar manifest destiny kind of laid out, as far as I had 6 months of savings. That's kind of what people in the US tell you, like, have 6 months of savings in the event of an emergency, you get laid off. And I was like, good, I'm good. I am okay here. I didn't feel nervous when it happened. I was like, I'll find a new job, no problem. Well, long story made very short, fast forward 11 months later, we've blown through all of that 6 months of extra money we had stowed away. And all of a sudden, the screws were to me to say, you got to figure out how to provide for your family. And ultimately, that came through the form of trapping. I had some contracts with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, was doing some wolf trapping, which pays pretty well in Idaho, and some other stuff, just full bore, selling pelts, the whole nine. And that's how I paid my mortgages before I ultimately found another job in the white collar industry, which is where I'm at now, still kind of toiling away for the man, but for a little bit of a bigger paycheck. And that's kind of what spurred the trade gap, which was just my dive into understanding, like, okay, the only thing that saved my bacon in that scenario was just by fortune alone, I had started to learn some form of a trade. And my version of trade's very loose, but it was trapping for me and some taxidermy that floated us. Had I not had that, I don't know what would have happened. We definitely would have been liquidating more assets. We would have been really pushing, the line a little bit more. I would have been getting a job at the local store, which is fine. But it saved me. And that's what inspired the book itself, which we can talk about too here in a little bit.
Yeah. E.H. Chapin had that quote, out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls, the most massive characters are seared with scars. Had it not been for that suffering and that pain that you're feeling, you probably wouldn't have been spurred on to learn welding, to use trapping as a means of a livelihood. Where would you be if you didn't get laid off? What would your life look like?
I mean, it would look similar to what it is now, but I would have fewer skills that A, I enjoy doing, and B, act as a hedge against, what I foresee as a full change in our economy and the way that our system here in the US and even Canada has been set up over the last 20 years.
Tell me about that.
So once I got hired again is when I started to write this book. When I got hired, I was really reflecting over the pain that you just mentioned. It was 11 months of pain. It was a lot of my wife and I on our knees praying for, something to come about to help change it. We were going back and forth on whether we needed to sell our cabin. We sold our car. We were down to like 3 kids, 2 adults, no vehicles in a non-walkable city. It was tough. So out of the reflection, I started to think about a lot of things. One, I went to night welding school. I was like, look, I'm going to start to double down on trades that mean something to me. And just for the record right now, I still do some stick welding, but I also went and I've started my apprenticeship for getting my electrical journeyman's license. It's a very long process, especially part-time. Like, this is probably a 10-year process that I'm going under, but doing night school for being an electrician and kind of helping out with an electrician friend I know from time to time when he needs it to get apprenticeship hours. But, it was the reflection on that and saying, like, I don't ever want to be caught with my proverbial pants down again. And the trends that I'm seeing in the white collar tech world are layoffs. You look in the news any day, it's like layoffs. We have AI agents that are doing coding. So engineers who used to gather a huge paycheck are just not being hired right now. Product managers like myself, like, you introduce Chat GPT and you can kind of do the job pretty well with way fewer people than you used to be able to. Same goes for graphic designers, technical writers, the list goes on. And people are being laid off left and right, and people are having a hard time finding jobs. And so it spurred me to start researching, like what has been the educational track of trade work and knowledge work in the US. And I'll try to make this very short. But it all started in 1917 in the US when agriculture was really picking up kind of on the tail end of the Industrial Revolution. And in Georgia, there were two senators, the state of Georgia, two senators who really saw a lot of destitution in their area, going into the 20s. And they wanted to bring in education work. So they had a federal mandate that states could buy into to bring in trade education, right? And this was mostly in the form of agricultural trade at the time. And that act lasted all the way up through the 60s. So states got federal funding essentially for building trade schools all across the US. And it was relatively successful. There were different re-ups through the, the 40s and the 50s, post-war, post-Korean War, to kind of, arm the American public with skills that actually paid money. And at the time, with manufacturing just going through the roof, think of the car industry in Detroit, just all over the US. It was very successful. And then into the 60s, kind of is where it hit its peak. If you were in the 60s in the US, and I did a lot of interviews for this book, almost every high school had some either metal shop or wood shop where you could go and learn a trade. And many people ultimately either went into the trades or at minimum had some knowledge of how manufacturing worked. Like even if somebody did go to college and didn't go into the trade, they understood how you slap two pieces of metal together. They understood how to, change their oil in their car. They understood woodworking so they could do some work on their home that they could afford at the time.
Yeah.
And that trajectory kept going all the way up until the 80s. And in the 80s, there was a paper called, I'm going to blank on it right now, even though I just wrote a book on it, but it was something around like the National Reform of Education.
Sure.
You pick up the book starting on Tuesday if you really want to find the actual paper. But it was pretty much saying if we're going to compete with China at the time, we need to focus on STEM education, the science, technology, engineering, and math. On the surface, not a bad paper. But what happened is a lot of the funding that was going into that original federal grants for trade education almost immediately got diverted to STEM. So, I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in the early 90s. And I no school I ever went to had a trade shop. So it was that like early mid 80s when all the funding got rerouted from trades to technology. So I had a computer lab in the early 90s in my school learning how to type. And pretty much from that point on, say late 80s, early 90s, the stance in America was higher education or bust. It was you need to learn technology. Trades are kind of a lesser than pursuit at this time. We need knowledge workers was kind of the terminology. We need people who go and learn philosophy, political science. It doesn't matter what you go to college for. You go and you will come out on the other end with a high paying job and it'll all be good. You take on the debt, doesn't matter. You'll pay it off quickly. And then of course, fast forward to my generation finally getting out of school, right in the recession of 2007, 2008, there's no jobs to be had.
Right.
That's higher than it's ever been. And then it's never really recovered from there. And it's just been, we have a generation of skillless people.
Well, and so you worked in the AI industry, and we're looking at AI and how that's being integrated with in the workforce, how people are losing their jobs, how one AI agent can easily replace a whole team of individuals. Maybe not to the same degree of what everyone can do, but when a cost-benefit analysis is done, they're like, I'm okay giving up a little bit because in a couple of years, AI is going to be even better, right? A lot of these technology sort of things are disposable. Like when I grew up, I was learning about computers as well. I was born, 78, so grew up in the 80s and started seeing the computers go in the classroom. I learned little C++, little basic, just so I can hack away at the nibbles game and get the high score, right? Just the bare minimum amount. But those were kind of building blocks for later things. But if I were to get into any sort of programming now, I'd be completely lost. It's completely
No,
different.
you wouldn't, because now AI will do it for you. You can do what they're calling vibe coding.
Right.
Now you can get. Now is the time to get back into it.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is there are some fundamental things that I think people should have under their belt, and maybe having logic, reasoning, rhetoric, math, basic, like, I don't know, like your computers can do your math for you. Your AI can now do your logic for you, right? Like there's all these different things, but rules that you can comport yourself by, or you can hold other things to. Yeah. If this, then that. Does this make sense for my own personal usage case? Would it make sense for me to use AI in this? Yes or no, based on what? I think those sort of skills are going to be like longer term kind of hard skills, like this traditional things of when you're talking about how do you stick two pieces of metal together. Now, whether it's a computer doing it, a machine, you have to understand that different metals melt at different rates and they'll oxidize differently and they can join differently. But if you have that basic understanding, in the same way that I have a basic understanding of C++ and BASIC, I understand a little bit about how computer programming, and I can kind of hack my way around these different things. I think there's a strong case to be made for having an overall, what do they call that? Renaissance man kind of a understanding of how things work.
Well, you just named one of the titles of a chapter in the book.
Right.
Like that modern Renaissance man. And I think one of the things I put forward in the book really towards the end is a touch on what you're just saying, is a real general education. When I went through college, I was getting a general education degree. That general education degree comprised of some political science courses, some humanities, a little bit of math, and languages, right? That was a general education. That is not a general education. That is a specific education. And one that doesn't necessarily in our society today lend itself towards a good paying job. So the argument I'd like to make and put forth is we need to get back to true general education. You know, at the peak in the 60s when, you know, college bound individuals were increasing, but there was still the demand for, you know, trades education in high school, whether you ended up going into trades or not, was probably the peak in the US of like actual general education. It was, you know, you got to learn it all. You know, you have your home ec class, you got your wood class, you got your shop class, and then you still have your math, your science, languages, all of that. And I think that's where we got lost going into the 80s and 90s was it was now all humanities. Like that's all you need to learn is like STEM and humanities. Everything else is lesser than. So I think it's like that full circle approach of, you know, we're going to be in some dire straits pretty soon. And we can talk about the economics behind the lack of tradesmen and women out there. But we need to get back to general education. You know, we need welders who can recite Kant and Shakespeare as much as we need, you know, people who can, you know, write PhD level dissertations on some algorithm that can also swing a hammer.
Yeah, I think having that basic practical skill base is important because the ins and outs, the real technical things, AI is starting to pick up the slack on that. Like, and I got a couple examples. So I've got an old pinball machine. It's got no electronics in it, so to speak. It's all wired in, and it wasn't working for me. And I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. How do I figure this out? Well, I got these schematics and I can't really read them. They're so tiny. And like I could if I wanted to, but the ADHD kicks in. It's just like, it's overwhelming. Like I'd rather take the time and go through every little wire on this thing than look at the schematic and try and wire it out that way. But if I take a picture of the schematic and then I took a picture of the inside of the pinball machine, AI is like, oh, here's what you got to do step by step. And I put the thing on speakerphone and I'm like, okay, talk to me like I'm stupid, right? Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. What's my next step? And I worked through piece by piece until I could figure it out. It helped that I know how to solder. It helps that I know how to use a multimeter. And if it's too fancy, then I can ask AI how to interpret the readings. But there needs to be a fundamental skill set to be able to at least start that. And in the same way, like our air conditioning stopped working. I call in buddy of mine, his family owns a plumbing, heating, HVAC company. And I said, hey, I mean, if I'm going to hire anyone, I'm going to hire a friend. Come on by, right? So they send one of their technicians by. Technician looks at it and says, well, I'm not sure. Comes back a second time, does some stuff to it. And so after the second time, I'm like, all right, I'm going to take a crack at this myself. Get AI on there. Have it put me through the whole process. And, okay, so there's some Freon recovery and a couple other things that you're supposed to have a tech there for to do properly. So anyways, what that technician would have really benefited from was the ability to understand how AI works, because they would have been able to fast track this whole process. And what I could benefit from is some of the specialized tools that this technician has. And so there is this marrying of ideas that I think is really important until AI dies or takes over the world, I guess.
Yeah, I think of it as like a Venn diagram, right? Like there's that overlap. Like I think a lot of people who are going to see success in the next 10 years, if you think about whether that's financially or in business, are people who have a strong base in whatever their expertise may be, or they are a Renaissance man mentality where they know a little bit about everything, and then you can augment it with AI. It's a great augmentation tool. Like it's a catch-22 where it can really lead to brain rot, where you don't ever feel you need to learn core skills because you can rely on this to answer questions for you, do things for you. But those who take the time to learn core skills that aren't necessarily AI, like you said, the ability to solder, the ability to understand just general plumbing or HVAC things, and then you add AI on top of that, it can really take you to that next level. And I think that's going to be great. And in that Venn diagram of people who know nothing about AI but are skilled in the trades, and then you have the other circle of people who know nothing about trade work but know a lot about AI. Those people who overlap, who have a little bit of both, are going to be the people who really excel in whatever they do over the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever the horizon for this actually looks like.
I think so. I think you're right. I think there is the natural human reaction to having a navigator in your vehicle. Okay, take a left here, next set of lights, take a right. We're going to go a couple of miles down. And I can drive, I can operate the vehicle. Person's giving me the directions, then ask me, how do I get there again? Oh, well, I think I remember, right? Or maybe I don't, or I'm quick to forget. If I looked at the map and I plotted it out myself, then it's going to be more in there. And I think AI is kind of like that navigator that we have, that naturally people are just going to kind of rely on it. And there probably should be another step that if it's something they think they're going to ever have to do again, spend a bit more time with AI and say, okay, like, how will I remember this? Give me some mnemonics. Help teach me, so this is something that, what are the most important parts that I should know so I can work forward with?
Yeah, I think that's right. And like the argument in the book is, if you're thinking of the Venn diagram, it would be talking to those knowledge workers, the people who have not swung a hammer, who have had their career in a space that is, maybe not AI driven, but largely something that could be replaced by AI easily, back to the middle, to that Venn diagram, to say, you should learn skills and augment it with all the stuff all the stuff you got through your college educations, all that good stuff, and to stay competitive. Because the other ends, I think both sides of those Venn diagram are at risk, right?
So I've I got my gut feeling as I think I know where this is going to go, but I'm going to throw it out anyways. I want to ask, how much did you use AI for researching and maybe spell checking, editing, whatever, the trade gap?
Almost zero. Actually, zero. Like I'm a purist in that regard. I saw something the other day in relation to AI where it says everybody now is an artist, everybody now is an author, and it's very easy to leverage it. But as you know, I've written several books, even outside of the Turning Feral, and for me, it's a mental escape. Like I self-admittedly, I believe that I am struggling right now with brain rot from both social media and AI. It is so easy. Like my daughter yesterday, she brought in a wasp. It was a dead wasp. but it was gnarly looking here in Idaho. I'm like, what is that? In the past, I might have like taken time to describe this wasp to Google or something that was non-AI driven at the time. Be like, hey, there's a wasp roughly 1 inch long. It's got like tan and red bands around its thorax. It's got medium-sized antennas. Found in Boise, Idaho. What would this be? And it might give me a list, and you can narrow it down and start to do research. I literally took my phone out, took a picture of it, and I got like a dictionary back on what this bug was, what it eats, all of that. Turns out to be non-aggressive, by the way, though it looked very aggressive.
Yeah, sounds like it.
It was a cicada killer wasp. I didn't even know we had cicadas here in Idaho, but we do. And it took 2 seconds, but then I never absorbed anything. Like I've been thinking on it, as an example. So maybe I thought a little more, but it was that like I took a picture, it gave me the result, and I moved on.
Yeah.
If I saw that same thing out in the wild again, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a cicada killer. I'd have to pull my phone out again and be like, what was that thing again? Oh yeah, let me just take another picture. So I struggle with that brain rot. You add in the social media aspects of just like it's hard to get away from like mindless scrolling. And I try to be conscious about it, and I'll find it. And my wife and I go on intermittent breaks because we'll just find ourselves like on the loo or whatever, just scrolling. And then you're like 30 minutes goes by and you're like, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
And I think that coupling is just sending us down this path of, true brain rot. And for me, the writing aspect is my escape from that. Like when I write, I get up in the morning and I write. I write my words out of my brain. And when I look at this book, especially like there's a lot of AI slop out there. There's more books than there's ever been in the world. But, whether people say, believe it or not, and that's the hard part is people are going to be like, well, maybe you just used AI to write it, blah, blah, blah. I didn't. I can look myself in the mirror and know I wrote all 34,000, 40,000 words sitting at my desk in the morning, hacking it away, and then using fantastic human editors to help me refine it and get it out the door and get it packaged in a way that's hopefully meaningful.
So 0 is exactly what I figured you'd come back with.
Yeah.
So my gut was right on that.
Well, it's not 0 because I did have it shop around some title stuff for me. I ended up going with the title that I had originally come up with a long time ago. But I was like, let's play with ChatGPT. Like, here's the context for the book. Here's the title I have. And it gave me some other ones that I wasn't too jazzed about. So,
some friends of mine are putting a book out. It's an amazing book. They both have exceptional backgrounds. They are in the top less than 1 percentile of what they do in the world. Amazing book. But they sat down a few years ago and they spoke it all into tape recorders. They got it transcribed. They're trying to put it together and then it gets shelved. And then they're trying it again and it gets shelved because they're not writers, right? That's not what they do. And so they ended up utilizing AI and the large LLM, I guess they call it, to help tie it all together. And it was really useful. It hasn't come out yet. It's going to come out in a bit. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it yet, so I'll just talk about it in the a bit more nebulous.
Yep.
But it does a great job. It references things back and forth. Yeah. It says, like, we talk about this, and then you'll see it over here. But it also does other things in there, like contrast phrasing and M dashes and all these indicators, which sound really cool the first time you see it. But once you get a little bit of AI fatigue, you're going to be like, this looks like AI had written this thing. And I did some videos a while back. We had one of our instructors, and it's a government video that we're doing, and he was wearing this goofy paracord bracelet because he thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Like, if you get captured, you could escape with this paracord, like all these goofy things, right? It's like cartoon that they have. This guy's imagining, I can catch fish with it. I can use it as fire starter. And the reality is his friends are like, oh, so you're wearing a bracelet now, hey? But as soon as it was done, he's like, I wish I didn't wear that bracelet. It totally ages this. It puts me in a different category. And I look at AI like a paracord bracelet. When people are looking at this, they're going to quickly dismiss the value that these people have in the book because it's just an AI thing. And no, the concepts aren't AI. It was put together by AI, but all the concepts and all the stuff inside there. And I get it from your side for the therapeutic thing, but I also get the outside perspective looking in,
Yeah.
that people will judge you based on the AI thing. And I don't want to yap too long here, but I'll give a silly story, sort of self-deprecating. So there's a guy, some of our listeners may have heard of him. His name's George St. Pierre. He's done a little bit of fighting in the UFC. And anyways, got a few followers on Instagram. He's gotten into hunting. I thought, I'd love to chat with him on the podcast. So I reach out to him and I talk a couple times. I don't hear anything back. And I'm like, well, he's got about 5 million people that follow him. So I get on AI and I'm like, all right, I spend 20 minutes, half an hour, like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just going through back and forth. What's his psychology like? What's his this like? What would get him to want to respond? Because I think there would be a lot of value for the listeners. I'm hoping I can bring some value to him, right? Anyways, Ham wrote this really nice AI thing, and I send it on over, and I'm feeling happy with myself because I put so much work into this. And then I get back into AI, and I'm like, he's got 5 million followers. What if he just doesn't read my DM here? And I want to put an email together of the same thread, right? And I figure I'll send him an email in the same kind of way. And so I type that into AI, press go. How come I'm not getting anything back? Oh, wait. That wasn't AI. I DM'd that over to GSP. I DM'd my AI request to GSP. And so then in my blind panic at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not social media savvy. Like, how do I unsend this? Oh, this thing says delete. And before reading the whole thing, ADHD kicks in, I guess. It says delete. I think it said delete for you or delete for user. So I deleted it. And now I can't unsend it. So anyways, I had to send him over this very highly personal one because what I thought I was doing great, the second that there is light shone on it, that somebody else from the outside might see me using it, I'm like, wait a minute, he's going to look at this like I'm being lazy. Like I wasn't lazy, but that's how everyone's going to view it.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty funny story, and I think you should have George St. Pierre on. That'd be a great guest. So if he's listening, come on.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm sure he's tuned in right now.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, to your point, we're in the wild west of it. It's so hard to tell. But like you said, like I've always used M dashes in my writing.
You can't use them anymore.
That's become like the tell, right?
Yep.
On LinkedIn and other, stuff like, oh, that must be AI slop because it's got that. So I've been a little butthurt all over the use of M dashes in AI. But you're right. But it's also hard to become discerning about it, right? You might read, like, if Jack Kerouac was writing right now, you would read this beautiful prose from him, and you would guess, like, did he really write that?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could take, it was interesting, like, I played around with this too. I've uploaded some of my writing to ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get to write an email, I've done the thing like, hey, write this in the style that I would say.
Right.
You can modify it to be kind of for you to maybe mask some of that AI. Trying to think of the right word. It's just like
stigma.
Well, I don't even know. It's just something that smells like AI. It's an intuition you get. I'll get emails from people at work. I'm like, it smells like AI. And you just kind of have to laugh it off and like let it roll over your shoulder. But maybe it's not. And like to your point with your friend's books, I'm in a lot of like circles with writers and authors, and there are so many people who start books who will never publish. There's the psychology behind it, or maybe they're just not writers like your friends, and they had shelved it for many years, and they had the ideas down and they used it to tie together. I think that's beautiful. I think it's great. I think people need to get their work out there. Now, over time, can you start to tell, like, I'm going to hedge my bets on saying, I hope so. I hope someone could read my work and be like, oh, I see the fallacy in his writing enough to recognize that it's actually me. Being open to having errors or stuff that is unique or linguistically unique for the area that you live in. That might be a tell of saying, oh, this guy actually wrote this book. But it's so hard to say. Like, I'm not anti-AI for getting good work out there. I have my hard stances personally,
Mm-hmm.
but there's going to be a lot of good that comes of it too. And it's this weird catch-22 that I don't know how to wrestle with, to be honest. And I think it's a time will tell scenario.
Well, I've taken the approach that like at some point, like progress is always happening and it's always putting people out of work, right? We used
Yeah.
to live in a, you know, a physicality. That was the thing that got you through. If you can get out, you can farm, you work hard, you're going to be making money and your family's going to do well, you're going to live happy. And then the industrial revolution and they automate things and all of a sudden they're like, okay, you got to get an education, right? And education goes through. Now we got AI coming and like that whole adage of you got to know your math. You're never going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket. Well, that didn't hold up too well. So there's always going to be these changes. There's always going to be times when people are like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Like when the steam engine came out, people were protesting it because they said, you can't use this. It's going to put so many people out of work.
Yep.
But we have to learn to pivot. And I think when it comes to like AI, I kind of liken it to using a word processor as opposed to a typewriter. Like I'm not going to invent my own word processor to put this thing together. I'm going to lean on the bolding and the spell checking and the suggested commas or whatever it might have as I type it out. People think that's okay. And if I'm going to be using AI, what I do now is the same thing I suggested to my friends. I said, in your forward, why don't you just be upfront and say, this is what we did. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this. And in order to get it out, we used AI to put this together, right? So now, based on my GSP thing or anything else, I was asked for some feedback on a new product that's being made by a Canadian manufacturing company, which is a Silvercore club partner, which I'm really excited to talk about when I can, but I'll just leave that there. And I'm just upfront. I said, look, I typed out 3 pages of notes, but I used AI to make it put into something that's digestible for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the tool moving forward, not to pretend like this is you, even though it is me. It's my stuff, but just say, look, I didn't invent the word processor, but I quickly typed it out.
Yeah, I think that kind of footnoting was that level of honesty, and it helps you to avoid that questioning. You know, like, yeah, this was my notes. I used AI to put into 3 bullet points that you could take away more easily.
Yeah.
You're a self-deprecating guy. I'm a self-deprecating guy. I tend to be a little verbose in my note-taking and stuff like that. So, for me, it'd be like, hey, instead of sending you 4 pages of ramblings from an ADHD brain, I asked AI to help me condense it to the 3 main takeaways for you, right? I think that's honest. I think that's fair. And I think it's a good use of an LLM and AI and kind of everyday task taking. But what's interesting to me too, the amount of electricity and energy for every single one of those prompts being someone typing a plain language request into ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, whatever you use, is astronomical.
Is it really?
Oh my God. I don't know what the actual stat is. Someone will have to Google it, but it is.
Get on AI and ask.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it is an absurd amount of energy per prompt. And, with it comes the need for more data centers and electricity to be able to continue to run these things at the scale that they are going to continue to amplify at. There's the All In podcast. I was listening to it the other day, and it was all about manufacturing. It was like, how do we, actually build these things to continue on this path for AI? And then tying back into the book a little bit is, my high school graduating class. This will, age me as a young guy, but I graduated high school in 2006 or 2007. In the U.S., there were 33 million high school graduates. 76% went to a 2 or 4 year pay-to-play university, taking on debt. Out of that 33 million, I think the number is like super low, maybe 10, 15% went to a trade school. Another couple did nothing, and then some went into the military, which you could argue might lead to a trade in some instances as well. So let's say it's 15%. So, you're having a very small number year over year of people who are actually learning the trades, HVAC, plumbing, welding, insert any of those. And you do that year over year over year over year. And the number of tradespeople has just been minimally low. And for every 5 people that are retiring out of the trades right now, only 2 are replacing them. But the demand is going up, not just domestically for like, hey, I need somebody to come fix my HVAC, but even just for like building data centers, they need bukus of electricians. And they were saying they can't hire enough electricians. They need welders. They need everything that goes into building these physical machines to power the digital world that we're moving into. And, that's a stark contrast. And now, I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it even in my own life of like, now you call a handyman for a leaky water heater, whatever it is. It's not like, hey, I'll be there in an hour. It's like, yep, I could probably get to you in a week or 2.
That's right.
But meanwhile, your floors are bowing because your water heater's leaking. And you don't even know where your water shutoff valve is.
Yep.
And then that panic is starting to set in for people every day, like that. We don't know the basics anymore.
Yeah.
And that's so scary.
It's very scary. So we look at our education system, which is rather antiquated in its approach,
Yep.
Wrought with flaws. I did not do well in a traditional educational system.
Yep.
Some people do. I can see a lot of areas where there can be improvements made, but with the idea of the trade gap, your book, and how we get people to be more Renaissance minded, what would you do to overhaul the education system?
Yeah.
Or would you leave it as it is?
There's a lot of great examples, and one I talked to about in the book is the state of Oklahoma. They have done a great job historically, even from like the early 1900s, in trade education. Largely a rural agricultural state, but they have started to integrate trade education more holistically in their middle and high school curriculum. Every single county has a trade center. I think there's like 26 counties, might have the number wrong, but that means there's 26 trade educations. And they have a very good program where at the beginning of high school for these students, I think it's called ICAP. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but they'll sit with high school students and kind of work out what do they want their high school career to look like. You should have the opportunity to dabble in some of these things. Like you can come before school, during school, or after school if you want to learn to hang sheetrock and do construction. If you want to do nursing, you should start to kind of getting some nursing education while you're already in high school. And what's happening is they're graduating kids that either may want to still go on to a 4-year degree, but they have a hard skill that they're already certified in, say welding, to help maybe augment the debt that they're taking on for it. They can work as a welder through school. They can work as a nurse through school. Things of that nature where they're actually working with kids to give them a true general education, which is skill development as well as the, humanities side and STEM side, and letting kids kind of find where their passions are. Because it sounded like you, like, I didn't do great I ended up forcing my way through it. Like I did, my high school, and I was a very average student. I got more focused in college, and then I did graduate school twice. But I didn't ever really know what I wanted to do. I had never actually been exposed to, say, doing business. I didn't get exposed to trades. I was just kind of blindly following what people said was the right formula to be successful. And it turned out to be very false for me. I was able to bully my way into a career in a field, which was great, but that was my personality. That wasn't my, education that paid off for that. That was just pure tenacity. So I think what they're doing well in Oklahoma is doing true general education early, exposing kids to so much, letting them kind of like take that Montessori approach of like, what are you attracted to? But being very honest with them. I think the director of ICAP in Oklahoma was saying something to the effect of, we still have to develop grit in these kids, especially in the trades, because, the worst thing they could do is show them how to hang sheetrock and then kick them out the door, and they're actually hanging sheetrock and they don't understand what the environment is like. And construction environments, a lot of trade environments, like they're hard on you. There's the apprentice mentality. They're going to be bullying. There's going to be stuff that you have to be prepared for. So I think that's the answer is expanding that more generally across the U.S. And that's for kids coming up. Now, for adults who are already in the world that I'm in, that is a different story. And that's another thing I touch on in the book.
So, okay. So for an adult, they're up and coming in the world. You're going to encourage them to learn a trade, learn how to do something. What would be the number one trade that you tell people that they should be looking at?
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. And again, my knitting could be a trade in my mind, right? Like you could be making some socks on the side. EMS, like volunteering on the side. Like I have a friend of mine from my time at Capital One in the AI world where, he's ex-military, but he was also getting a little disillusioned with the day-to-day. He's like, I need something else to hang my hat on. And he got EMS certified, and now he helps run in the ambulances in the evening a few nights a week in his town. The approach is very much, I kind of borrowed from Michael Easter the idea of like his Misogi, and then Michael Easter's book, Comfort Crisis. He's like, you should do at least one thing every year that is very, very hard physically that you run a chance of not actually completing. And that's to kind of help build this resilience that you can kind of grow into over time. And for me, I kind of have the same mentality, but applying it to trades. Like if you're a knowledge worker, that's great. You're making money. But as a hedge, you should start doing like little monthly mini Misogis. The things you've put off or have historically said, due to the time value of money, it's easier for me to hire someone else to do it, to try it yourself. And for many people, that might be changing the oil in your car 1 month. The next month, it might be those floorboards or the baseboards that you've wanted to replace for forever that you never did. Again, use AI as an augment, ask ChatGPT, like, what do I need to go get from Home Depot? And, put it up there, have it speak to you and do it. But do these little things to accrue a set of skills. Now, you could focus on one thing. Like a lot of guys I know like to smoke barbecue. Go to your night welding local community college and learn to stick weld like I did, and then build a barrel smoker and smoke something. I'm sitting in front of my desk, like, this will not mean much to many people, but this is the first piece of metal I ever welded together.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little T. And you can see like my terrible welds and then starting to go into something that's passable. But I look at this every day sitting at my desk, and this is one of the more proud things that I have accomplished is like knowing that I could do something that my grandfather used to do, who was a welder by trade. And just picking up those little wins of self-reliance is what my proposal is. I'm not telling people to quit their jobs and knowledge working, or if you're a lawyer making a lot of money to quit, but man, you should spend extra time to try and expand your mind and your skills capability. And then in the event of the hammer dropping, you might have something to fall back on.
Yeah, and if the hammer never drops, I think you touched on something pretty huge there, and that's the grit portion of it. So many people are discomfort adverse, and yeah, Michael Easter writes about that in the Comfort Crisis, and I think he makes a very, very good point. And he wrote in your book as well. He's got a little blurb that he put about it. The idea of doing things that are uncomfortable for the sake of knowing that you can actually do uncomfortable things. Like those Misogis, what are his rules? Number one rule is you can't die.
Yep,
because it kind of defeats the purpose of the Misogi if you're dead.
Yep.
But isn't number two that the likelihoods of success are, maybe I'll succeed, maybe I won't?
Yep. Coin toss, right?
Right. So I think he's brought some attention to that. I think with the trade gap, you're bringing more attention to that idea, and perhaps from a different angle, and maybe it's a little bit more tangible that people can actually do these mini Misogis on a regular basis. Okay, I was recording a podcast on a boat the other day, and buddy's a videographer, and he's setting up one of the GoPro things on the side, and he dropped some of my kit overboard. Okay, fair enough. I can go on Amazon. I can order a new piece of kit. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. or I can make it myself. Like I've got enough stuff in the back in the shop, and it's not going to be perfect, and it's going to take me longer to make that than it's going to take to just buy it on Amazon. Like the cost
Which might
value
be at
prop.
your door the same day.
Oh, it would have. It would have arrived at the same day, and the cost value proposition is like, so how much per hour do I think I'm worth? How much time is it going to take? And I've played that game back and forth a lot of times. And of course, if we're doing it, what do I think I'm worth? Well, I think I'm worth a lot. So you can start falling in the trap of paying for things over and over again, as opposed to doing things. But it doesn't lead to a happy life. It doesn't give me kit that has scars on it that I can be proud of, that I could turn around and show people or hand down. Happiness isn't a destination that I can ever get to. It's a byproduct of what I'm doing towards that destination.
So the thing you just described is something I cover in 2 chapters on the book, which is both of our generation, and especially the Amazon generation now, is about the time value of money. We've all been coached up, like, like you said, you drop that kid overboard, you start doing that dance of like, well, what's my hourly rate? And I could just order this, pay the cash, it's at my door, I can forget about it. Or do I go and do the thing and it takes time and it has the scars and it has meaning? And 99 out of 100 times, most of us these days are going to be like, bip, it's a one-click purchase button. It's already got my address in there, got my credit card, I'm good to go.
Yep.
The argument I make is that we should transfer from time value of money, TVM, to what I'm calling time value of experience, TVE. And looking at these things, knowing that the math doesn't math. Like, there's no way you can economically talk your way out of that mentality. But you have to make the conscious decision to say, you know what? This hourly rate thing doesn't work out. This is going to take me a long time. This might lead to more time because there's going to be something that happens that I don't expect because I don't know what I'm doing. But it's worth that in order to build that resilience, to build that experience, to build those skills, despite what we've grown up being pushed towards, which is time value of money.
So you mentioned earlier that going through school that you didn't know what you wanted to do. Do you know what you want to do now?
I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I fell into my career. And what's ironic is I've had a career in AI for the last 12 years. Very lucky for that. But I always found myself having a hard time answering the question at dinner parties, hey, Zach, what do you do? And I don't know if it was embarrassment or what, but I always kind of skirted the question and be like, oh, I don't even know what I do. And like rerouted the question. Because what I would say is like, yeah, I'm an AI product manager and I help build algorithms to further fuel the absurd consumerism that we're all, tied into. And that either sounds creepy or, people just kind of like nod. They're like, oh yeah, cool, that guy. Versus now, to somewhat answer your question, is like, I'm a writer, I'm a trapper, and occasional welder. That's my answer.
Yeah.
And those are the things that bring me joy, right? And I think that's where that line is, like, what actually defines me? My day-to-day career, and it's taken me a long time to get here, Travis, is not my day job. I thought it was for a long time, but it never was. So now as I'm finding my way into stuff that like has soul to it, is the things that I claim as what I do, because it is what I do. I spend time in the mountains. I guide. I hunt. Now, I still have my day job. That still pays the bills, but that's not what I do.
I've mentioned this on the podcast before, and it's been said on the podcast by Dean Nugent, who was ex-British Army. Him and Jay Spud were sitting at the table here, and they were talking about mental health and resilience, and Dean brought up something that has always stuck with me. He says, well, Jace, he's ex-British Army. He's a sniper with them, done this elite stuff. Then he's a firefighter, and now he's IMFGA mountain guide and some other certification as well, which is quite up there. Anyways, we were out climbing in Squamish. Dean's at the bottom. Jason's setting the route. Dean's belaying. Girl walks by and says, "Oh, you're a climber, are you?" Dean's like, "No, I'm not a climber. That guy up there, he's a climber, right?" And she says, "Well, hold on a second. You've got a helmet on. You got a harness on. You're attached to a rope and you're belaying a person. Are you going up there?" He's like, "Oh, yeah." Well, sure sound like a climber to me. Like, I've never been on any of those, right? Mm-hmm. And that one has always stuck with me because, like you, I've had a hard time. You're going across the border. What do you do for work? I don't know, like as little as possible, right? Or whatever, just whatever joke thing you can throw out there. Mm-hmm. Only recently, I've said I'm a podcaster. I think this is going to be in the 160s, 170s. Been doing this since 2019. And only recently, someone's like, "Oh, you're a podcaster." No, I'm not a podcaster. I said, "Well, you got a microphone, you talk into it, you put it out every couple of weeks. You look like a podcaster to me," right? How long because you've got what, 5, I think it's 5, 6 books out?
Number 5 is the trade. Yeah.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable to say that you're a writer?
Now.
Really?
I mean, really, like, yeah, I put them out. Like, but again, I don't think podcasting right now is the bulk of your income. Writing for me is not the bulk of my income. I'm making tens of dollars. I'm like rolling in it. But I think what people will assume is what you do is tied to what pays your bills. I think that's the mindset shift that sounds like you've gone through and what I've gone through is like, what do I do? I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. I write articles for Field Etho. I write articles all the time because I like writing. Mm-hmm. And I'm a writer. I'm a welder. I'm a trapper. Those are the things that I do. And it took me up until very recently to get to that point of understanding of who I am and being comfortable saying that. And everything that stemmed around me hemming and hawing and trying to figure out what to say when people asked me that before was all fueled by insecurities. Like, I know myself enough to know, like, my go-to is a joke and like rerouting, well, let me talk about you. Let me talk about you. Like, that doesn't worry about what I do. Let me talk about what you do. Let's talk about you. But a lot of that's insecurity, or it was for me at them.
Oh, I agree. I was never secure enough to say I'm a podcaster. I mean, I'm not Joe Rogan, right? There's so many people that can do this so much better than me, right? So I'm not them. In the same way that Dean's not a climber.
I'm a New York Times best-selling author.
Right.
I'll be happy if I sell 1,000 copies of this book. But, you figuring out where that comfort level is and getting to that point to say, like, this is who I am. I'm okay with that. And I think it starts to unlock a lot in that craft, whatever craft or set of crafts that is or skills, being able to say that. And if you say, like, I'm a knowledge worker and you own it and that is your life, great. It just happens to not be me.
I think there's a lot of power in what you just said there. And I think the audience, people listening to this, to the right people, that's going to resonate with them.
Yep.
What does success look like to you?
That has been an ever moving target. I'd be a liar if I said, like, success for me has absolutely changed and made 180-degree turns for every stage of life I'm in. Right now I've got 3 kids, 4 and under. Success for me is being a present father, a good husband, and providing. That's it. Those 3 things. That is success to me, and I am succeeding right now, and I'm very happy with that.
I like that. I've always defaulted to Earl Nightingale. Success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal, right?
Yeah, it is.
But it's a bit of a cop-out. It's a bit of a cop-out, deferring to somebody else's definition, but I agree with it. It is something that you're always working towards. It will be a changing target, and different items will be a measure of success. Interesting that your success, like, obviously, I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best husband, the best friend. I want to do what I can do, but that all requires external things as a indicator of my ability. Yeah. Do you have a definition of success that doesn't have those external indicators?
Man, that's a tough question. I mean, all right, well, I'll say this. And this is going to be me really, truly stepping out of my comfort zone. Because this is something that I had a hard time saying to my wife the other day. I told her, let me give context for people. The first book I wrote, 2017, to date, that's from 2017 till now, sold a whopping 90 copies. 90. Big fraction of that is probably my family. So, it was a reality of what it is to be a writer. Now, Turning Feral has done great. It sold over 10,000 copies. And, that I went into that book with no expectations. So 10,000 people have purchased that book. Maybe some smaller number have actually read it. It's gotten good reviews and all that. Great success in my mind. But again, I didn't have that in my head. I was like, if I sell none or I sell 1 million, I don't know. With the trade gap, I told my wife that I'm going to sell 1 million copies of this book. I don't know what timeline that is, but I'm going to sell 1 million copies of this book. Now, whether that's saying it and manifesting it, that's part of it. But that is putting aside those other external factors. That's a measure of success for me. Now, will I be a failure if I don't? No. So I have this kind of like loose interpretation of success. It's not like a hard number, but that is a goal, and that would be real success for me if I did that.
1 million copies. So I have zero doubt you can sell 1 million copies of your book.
I appreciate that.
There's a few different ways you can get there, and I like the way that you're getting there. I mean, like, you can price it out at less than pennies on the dollar and buy them yourself, right? Hey, you got your 1 million, right? But there's, but the concept that you're relaying is something that's very attractive to people right now. Yeah. People are looking for a way to be, not just to be self-sufficient, but a way that they connect in the world themselves and with others. Yep. Because I think that that idea of being happy is something that appeals to a lot of people. And I think a lot of the world is waking up to happiness is a byproduct of what you do. It isn't a destination that you arrive at. And the trade gap is something that will allow people to find a path that the byproduct of is going to be happiness.
Yeah, I hope so. And again, it's not everybody needs to stop what they're doing and become an electrician. That might be a great path. There might not be. But there's zero downside to spending some time to be more self-reliant, to build some skills, to become a more well-rounded human in a world where, at least in the Americas, we have been pushed to do the opposite, to be specialists, to be, fully honed in on one craft that could be gone tomorrow.
Do you think there's an overarching reason why in the Americas people are pushed to go down that one path? Do you think maybe, like, I do have a tinfoil hat I haven't been able to use yet, but do you think there might be a tinfoil hat reason?
There could be. And I mean, it's less tinfoil hatty and more just like the actual history in the US. But I actually believe that the path that we were set down on education wasn't ill-conceived. I don't think there was malice in the 80s when the push started to go and degrade the trades and push people towards knowledge working. I don't think that's the case. I think there was a lot of historical things, and I talk about it in the book, that happened. The No Child Left Behind Act. There's a lot of stuff in the 90s and the 2000s that just kind of doubled down on pushing the trades as a lesser than thing, and now we're clearly, reaping what we sow in a negative way across the country. But I don't think so. I mean, I am too dumb to speculate on that. Now, I could, and I think a lot of people will, but I think it's just a byproduct of probably well-intentioned people who just could not see in the crystal ball what that really would mean for us 20, 30 years from now. And then again, I don't think anybody quite saw AI going. I've been in AI for the past 12 years, and it's always been like, we're almost there. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we're here. Like, it's accessible. Everyone can access it. And, it's useful. It's scary. It's nefarious. It's all of those things. And we're trying to learn how to operate within it. I don't think people could have seen that coming.
Is there anything that we should be talking about that we haven't talked about yet?
I'll touch on one thing just to kind of double down on it. And you mentioned, like, the two gentlemen you had on the podcast, and I listened to that episode, but talking about mental health, like one of the things that pushed me over the edge to write the book was a gentleman I had worked with at a company, similar backgrounds, but he was a data specialist. He had specialized in, our particular data format, database, and he got laid off. This was about a year before I got laid off. And, essentially that thing he had spent his life learning, or at least his adult life learning, was no longer needed, right? It was obsolete, which is going to be the continued trend of a lot of these different languages for engineers, for database engineers, etc. And the long story made short is he took his life, 2 young kids and a wife. Why? He couldn't find a job. Now, I'm sure there might be other factors at play there that I am not aware of, but I do know that he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger with 2 young kids and a wife because he felt like he could not provide. And I know the guy, or knew him, like, he wasn't incapable of reskilling. But I think that, speaking from experience in a layoff, like, I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, I had 11 months of unemployment. But in those 11 months, I felt so much pressure. I felt more pressure with young kids to provide and figure out a way to make this happen. And nothing in my traditional role was working out. I'd get to final interviews, they'd pull recs, they'd do all this stuff. And it felt terrible. And it felt endless. And I really didn't know. I'm like, I don't know if I will be able to get a job in this, community again. And that's what led me to start, well, obviously, the trapping and taxidermy is what floated us. But that's when I started night welding school. I'm like, I have to be able to do something that pays more than being a stalker at a store, which, again, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But I want to hedge against it. So I think the mental health aspect, I think we're unfortunately going to see more and more of that as we have ultimately skillless people who are, made redundant through AI that are going to be sitting there on their butts hoping for something to change, and it's not. And they're going to have to take that initiative to learn these new things. And that's why I say knowledge workers get ahead of it, hedge against it, start learning stuff on the side, because you never know when that hammer is going to drop.
Yeah, it is an important story. And, as you get older, you learn things differently. Yeah. I'm not going to say you don't learn things as well, but you learn things differently. And some people fall into this trap of doing the same thing over and over again and thinking, this is what I am, this is what I do, and I can't do this other thing. I mean, it's overwhelming. It's illusory in its effect to me. I remember the Adobe suite, and I'd watch people using it. And I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to be able to learn how to edit a photo or a video or be able to edit audio or do any of these things that this whole Adobe suite does. It's too much. It's a completely different language. I can't learn another language, right?
Yep.
And at some point, something clicked. It was because I was pushed to a point. There's a lot of negativity in my industry. And I was looking at, like, this is what I know. It's what I've done since I've been 4 years old. Guns are what I know, right? And I either do something else or I find a way to bring positivity into this industry. And there is some inspiration through other YouTubers and individuals out there doing stuff. I thought, if they can do it, I can do it. And I started sitting down, not only learning another language, but learning the Adobe language and putting this stuff out there. And it provides you more options. And I think if someone's going to be taking their life, it's because they've come to a point where that's, in their head at that time, the best viable option that they have. They don't have all these other options on the table that they can readily see. They're there, but just like Adobe was always there, and I could have always looked at that, unless you've touched in it and worked on it, it doesn't seem palpable or real to you.
And I think that's a hope for me, selfishly with the book, is somebody who might not have that clarity of vision to say there are these things out there that I could touch and I could learn, that they might at least have the curtain pulled back to be like, yeah, there are more options for me out there if whatever I'm currently doing doesn't work out.
Different professions, they have statistics that go with them. I think policing, they say it's one of the highest divorce rates for a profession, and
Yep.
dentists are the highest suicide rate, and
Yep.
psychologists or psychiatrists are the highest depression rate. And I was talking to a psychiatrist one time and asking about that, the depression rate and all the rest. And like, is that like you're listening to people's problems all day long? Is this something that that you have to work with? And he's like, so he talked about it from his perspective, but he also shifted it and he talked about suicidal ideation and people who are at a point where they feel like they need to commit suicide. I said, well, what do you tell them? And he says, I haven't lost a person yet, knock on wood. And I tell them the same thing. You know what? Maybe killing yourself's the right idea. Maybe that's the option. Maybe that's a route you have to go. But right now, that's not the decision you should be making because you're not in the right mindset to make that logical decision. He says, give it a month or two, come back, and we'll reanalyze this. And if it's in fact still the right decision, okay, then we can look at options for what you got to do here, right? But that allows him to buy time for the individual. And that mindset that the person's in where everything's cloudy and they can't see those other options, it's amazing what a good night's sleep can do. It's amazing what a bit of exercise and going for a walk, what limiting negative substances, alcohol, drugs, the social media, endless scrolling, all the rest, and put yourself into a different perspective. And I think that's what the psychologists do. Like really all the good ones will ever do is provide a different perspective, a different option for you. So I think when you say selling 1 million copies, I think that mental health aspect to this is exactly why people will want to read The Trade Gap.
I surely hope so. But man, Travis, this was awesome.
Thank you so much, Zach. I really appreciate you being on the podcast again. And I'm looking forward to you coming up into BC. We're going to have to get you up here.
We got to go bear hunt or do something up there pretty soon.
100%. Those Idaho boys are always looking for the jet black bears. And us up here, we're like, oh, we're looking for the color phase. So I can definitely help you out on those jet blacks.
You come down, we'll shoot a cinnamon bear down here, and then I'll go up and we can find us something jet black up in Canada.
Done deal. Zach, thanks so much. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, appreciate it.